Okie dokie. Thank you, and thanks for the invitation. And yes, I'll talk a little bit about the title. I've added one more word into that title than in the title in the program. The cloudy nature of bright Southern Ocean precipitation. And the emphasis in the yellow three words there is we want to look at the connection between clouds, radiation and precipitation. And as we try to evaluate our understanding of Southern Ocean clouds, we want to do it in the context of these coupled processes. Okay, so this is a work in progress, and it's also had some inputs from Catherine Nord, who is giving a talk in the climate sensitivity session, which is running parallel to this, and Ali Barangi, who's also done some work on the study of precipitation. Okay, so main points to ponder, to some extent, some of the sort of take-home messages sort of wrapped into these comments. The reflected sunlight from each hemisphere is, to the ability to measure it, is the same between each hemisphere, within 0.1 watts per metre squared. This was noted by Von der Haar and Sumi in '69, highlighted further by Voigt in 2013, and the review article that's going to be in press in the next couple of weeks, so it should be 2015 rather than 14. It's kind of reviewed, this whole topic's reviewed in that review article. The increased cloudiness of the southern hemisphere relative to the northern hemisphere, curiously enough, it does precisely offset the increased reflection from the northern hemisphere landmasses compared to the southern hemisphere. Kind of very curious. The hemispheric symmetry and the effects of southern hemisphere clouds in establishing it has a real profound consequence in the hydrological cycle. This is sort of discussed in Frierson and Huang. And an interesting paper by Haywood and colleagues have shown some experiments with the UK Met Office model where they force symmetry between hemispheres as observed, but not existing in models, and it has had a massive influence on the monsoon and monsoon precipitation. Pretty quite profound. About a third, I'm not going to show how to calculate this, but about a third of the reflected flux of the southern hemisphere emanates from the reflection of clouds between 30 and 60 degrees south. The majority of the precipitation from these clouds, but over 80% or so, falls from organised frontal systems, and this is well described in a paper by Cato et al. But as you're going to see, there's huge uncertainty surround the precipitation characteristics in this region. It doesn't mean that all is lost. It just I think, reflects the fact that it hasn't been a focus of the precipitation, Earth observations, precipitation community to sort of dwell on precipitation in the Southern Oceans. And that obviously is going to change now with GPM, where the focus is moving beyond the tropics to the mid-latitudes. We consider the Southern Ocean cloud effects as a coupled system, identifying systematic errors with respect to one process, such as in precipitation, typically relate to problems with other processes, such as cloud or such as radiation. So that's sort of the key topics that relates to Southern Ocean clouds and why we're interested in it. Here's the characteristics of precipitation. It's actually taken from Cato et al. And basically the left-hand panel there shows you the frequency of precipitation by for all frontal clouds. So the frequency of precipitation in terms of for all fronts, it produces about 80%, as I said, of the precipitation of the Southern Oceans. And then you can see it's broken down by cold fronts and warm fronts and quasi-stationary fronts. So the frontal systems are a major source of the way the precipitation falls in this region. And the GPM results, we saw some of these results yesterday in a session. GPM results demonstrate that, in fact, these are the largest precipitating systems on the planet. The scale of this is huge, and I'm going to show you this in a minute. If you look at the characteristics of precipitation as derived from CloudSat, and this shows you the incidence as observed by CloudSat. These are the panels up there in terms of precipitation, rain, snow, and mixed, and here's the zonal profile of these. You can see these the Southern Ocean down here in the regions of the Southern Ocean clouds. You can see that, according to CloudSat, these clouds are producing what we interpret to be precipitation about 20% of the time. 20-25% of the time. So, it's quite frequent precipitation, often in mixed-phased types of precipitation. And you can see the green profile here is the rain. And so I'm going to show some characteristics of the rain itself, and we haven't yet dug into the mixed phase and the snow characteristics as yet, so it's sort of part of the work in progress. If you look at the characteristics of precipitation from other sensors, and this was work done by Barangi et al. This is where you see the alarming nature of what we perceive to be our understanding of precipitation in the mid-latitudes, and it focuses over the Southern Ocean in this talk. I'm shown here as a CloudSat frequency of precipitation and the CloudSat amount of precipitation, and Barangi used this as kind of a reference to compare other types of observations, TRIM, PR, AMSARE, AMSU, and IR methods. And there are 4 different panels of frequency, because the frequency differs depending on the footprint size of the intrinsic sensor that's gone in to produce these other precipitation. So that's where you get different frequencies of precipitation with the CloudSat data. The footprint's been averaged up to match the IR footprint, for example. And this panel here shows you the frequency of precipitation missed by these detectors. So in the IR, for example, you see that the IR detectors are missing about 50% of the rain occurrence, almost all over the entire planet. It's definitely in the Southern Oceans. And you'll see why that's the case in a moment, I think. And you can see this is the amount, so you can see the microwave is missing major amounts of precipitation, both frequency and amounts of water, also in the Southern Ocean. And it's not because they're not really seeing it, it's just that the algorithms have been fundamentally tuned, in my interpretation, to be kind, have been fundamentally tuned to the tropics. Okay, so if you look at this a little bit more, and Barangi's done this in this reference, this is a zonal profile precipitation, and the red profile is this merged best estimate precipitation profile from combinations of TRIM, CloudSat, and the best information we have. So he's considering this our best zonal profile. It's arguable, of course. And down here you show the difference between GPCP and this best estimate of precipitation, and your CMAP, and the best estimate of precipitation is the black curve, and the green histograms are GPCP, and the bottom panel is the percentages of different deviation from this best. And you can see in the Southern Oceans, there are really major differences between the various different satellite products of precipitation. So this just underscores the fact that we have quite a lot of work to do to really sort of nail down our understanding of what types of precipitation and how much fall in these Southern Ocean clouds. Now, many of you probably haven't seen a diagram like this, but this is actually the CloudSat Quick Look, shows you a profile, one orbit, just randomly chosen. It happens to be July 6, 2008. I just pulled this out, just one sample. I didn't fish for it, I just pulled it out. You can see I'm looking at this frontal system down here, and these yellow, you can see parts of the sections here are yellow and green, and so what you see is, what you're going to see now is this is actually the radar information from the clouds all the way around that orbit, all compressed into, it's 36,000 profiles all compressed into one figure. And what you're going to pull up the radar reflectivity in these 2 regions here. So if you take the yellow region as you're coming up from the Antarctica, you start to see lots of shallow types of precipitation. The vertical scale here, this is probably about 10 kilometres halfway up there. Lots of shallow precipitation. And then as you move more towards the front, this is in the cold sector, you move more towards the front, you see deeper convection with sort of overlying clouds, but often precipitation below the overlying cloud. And it's this shallow precipitation that's really kind of missed by the infrared. It doesn't see it because it's sort of triggering to the higher, colder clouds. And then as you go into more the frontal system, you see how wide scale this is. This is sort of like 1,000 kilometres in scale. This is extensive precipitation, multi-layered systems, often with high clouds sitting above the precipitation, all sorts of interesting structures going on there. So that's just what one frontal system, wintertime frontal system, looks like. So one of the unique things we can do, and why this title was called The Cloudy Nature of Rain, is because we can actually use our suite of observations that we have sort of for the first time to look at the characteristics of the clouds that are producing the precipitation, or look at the characteristics of precipitation in the context of the clouds. And this is done in this next diagram, and it shows you the cloud top height. And this is actually the height of the clouds that actually produce the precipitation, not the highest clouds that are seen. The clouds that actually we determine producing the precipitation as a function of the fraction of total water that's fallen from those clouds for the region between 30 and 60 south for winter and summer. And so what you see is that there's sort of really kind of a bimodal structure to the total amount of precipitation. Precipitation equally comes from deep stuff and from shallower stuff in this regime. and that it's the heavier rain, the greater than 250 millimetre a day category of rain that's contributing most to the precipitation. Though the shallower stuff is in the lighter rain, between 10 and around 50 millimetres a day, we estimate, right? The wintertime precipitating systems are a little deeper than the summertime by well over a kilometre. So there's sort of the 50% of the rain's coming from clouds with tops of above about 7.5 kilometres. So we can look at the characteristics of this, and we can now ask questions about models. And one of the questions we're asking is, how is the most current version of the ECMWF forecast model, what we call the IFS model, do? And this is its representation of exactly the same data. And what you can see, two things, and we're still struggling with, we want to dig deeper and deeper and try to understand from a process level, and we haven't got time. We're hoping to have this done for this talk, but you haven't. But you can see that ECMWF wants to make all of its clouds from the deeper frontal systems, and it wants to make it mostly from the middle lighter precipitation. You don't get as much as the heavier rain that we observe. So there are some real issues with respect to the representation of the frontal precipitation as we see in this model. Okay, so let me go to, so one of this is work from Catherine Nord, and what she's found, I'm just going to cut to the chase here, what she's found is that when you look at, composite the data across fronts, the cloudiness across fronts, what they've found is it's in the cold frontal area where the biggest biases in cloudiness kind of exist. And I'm going to come back to that because that's something that also that they find in the ECMWF model. So then this is kind of getting to this. So this, if you take just one case of a frontal system, it's a case study that Richard Forbes has done, and this is the operational model and the liquid water path. The operational model is the frontal system there, and there's the cold sector there. Almost no liquid water in the cold sector, no cloudiness in the cold sector, whereas this is what the clouds look like. So you've got this open convection in the cold sector that the model is failing to pick up, and with the interpretation in terms of microwave radiances is that the frontal clouds have way too much cloud water. There's not enough cloud water in the cold sector clouds. There's almost none. So this is a bias that they're seeing. And so what they've done is they've introduced new physics into the scheme, the details which I don't have time to go on, but they've used these kinds of observations and the recognition that these cold sector clouds actually have quite a deal of supercool water in them that the model didn't carry. And they've made some changes to the microphysical scheme. And basically have been able to reduce reduce this water loading of the liquid water path in frontal clouds, changing the precipitation, and also reduce the amount of increased amount of cloud water in that cold sector, and that's kind of shown there. It's increased it partially. The consequence of that increase in the partial cold sector clouds is you get enormous increase in cloudiness in that cold sector. The consequence of that is you get greatly increased amount of sunlight reflected from these Southern Ocean clouds that the model before didn't have. I know this is a negative sign here, but that's defined with respect to positive down. So now what you've got with more supercool water in these cold clouds is you've got more cloud, more reflecting, and the end result is you've substantially remove the shortwave bias in the IFS. This is the old scheme, and this is the new scheme where they've jiggered around with their cloud microphysics and the detrainment of supercooled water from the frontal systems out into the cold sector. So this, Richard tells me, this, of all the things they've tried to remove this shortwave bias, which is a prevalent feature of many models, of all the attempts they've tried to remove this bias, this has had the single largest influence on the correcting for this bias, this treatment of the cloud physics, cloud physical processes. So let's just summarise then, go right at the time. Summary, we have been attempting to, and this is just work in progress, you can see what we're trying to do. We're trying to sort of integrate and look at the properties of Southern Ocean clouds from the perspective of radiation, from the perspective of clouds, and from the perspective of precipitation. You can think of this as water and energy. We show how the precipitation from Southern Ocean frontal systems comes from a mixture of shallow and deep clouds. This presents quite some observational challenges, such as with respect to OLR-based precipitation. Clearly it's missing major modes of precipitation in these Southern Ocean clouds if you base it purely on the infrared methods as trained for cold clouds. Unlike that observed, the ISF's precipitation is largely from deep clouds and is actually too light compared to what we observe. And the biases in the cold sector clouds of precipitation exist in the current reanalysis data, as Nord showed. So the current reanalysis shows significant bias with respect to clouds and precipitation, particularly in the cold sector. Changes in cloud processes in relation to supercooled water has had a profound effect on Southern Ocean clouds, improving the shortwave bias of the operation model and the precipitation from these, and also changing the precipitation from the frontal region, even though the vertical structure of that precipitation seems to be not the same as observations. It's had quite a profound effect on the precipitation characteristics. So just to sort of summarise again, we're trying to kind of look at precipitation through a cloudy lens rather than look at precipitation as just precipitation. And we think that's an important step forward to trying to, sort of better understand the processes that make rain. So thank you.